the Nonprofit Podcast, powered by Donorbox.
It's not often that you receive something in your inbox that makes you eager to open it and read what's inside, but that's exactly what one organization is sending. In fact, they're seeing email open rates of nearly 60%, which blows industry-wide averages out of the water. And they're doing a really great job keeping their supporters engaged in their mission with some simple yet really impactful strategies that you can use for your organization too. Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast. I'm Kara, fundraising coach at Donorbox. We're here each week with practical actions you can use today to increase donations and take your nonprofit to the next level tomorrow. Today, I'm joined by Jennings Wright, who started 1018 Uganda, which is an organization that works with teen moms and teen girls in Uganda's largest slum. These girls are often exploited and have very high rates of teen pregnancy. 1018 Uganda has a goal of making cultural change through empowerment of these girls and provides for them a residential program with a vocational and literacy program too. They feed thousands of meals a year and offer daycare and a clinic for teen girls. Jennings is based in the United States and leads operations and fundraising for the international organization. And she's running a one-person development shop. Know what's really outstanding though? Jennings does a tremendous job of storytelling through email to engage supporters and keep them continually engaged with all that's happening in Uganda. I recently signed up for their email newsletter and was simply blown away with the concise and compelling content in my inbox. I knew Jennings would have so much to share with nonprofit leaders and founders and fundraisers, so join me on this conversation where she breaks down some common misconceptions about communicating and provides some simple tips and tactics that can be put into practice right away. Welcome, Jennings. So glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Jennings, I am so impressed that you communicate the need of your mission for your organization and you do it with empathy and dignity, and it's really engaging content. And I'm assuming it's engaging the donor audience too. I've been reading your content and knew that I really wanted to talk to you more about that. So you've created your organization's communication efforts from the beginning, right?
Yes, it's just me.
You've seen some really terrific engagement from the things that you've written. Tell me a little bit more about the intentionality you've put behind it, or is it just all a happy accident that you've been able to continually improve on? What's your strategy?
I just use the newsletter and always have used the newsletter like I'm talking to you. It's not stat heavy. It's not numbers heavy. I just like to tell stories. And that just has really resonated. In general, I post on Tuesdays and Thursdays so people know that it's coming. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I do just talk to people. I tell stories about what's going on. Because I started it, I'm very familiar with what's going on and the people. And I've been there 14 times. And then I always try and connect it to something personal because I feel like I'm talking to people as me, then sharing a story. And I think where a lot of people get hung up is they're reporting. Like I'm reporting on something, but you're almost a step away removed from it. Mm-hmm. So I think, I don't know that it's a happy accident. I think that's just how I write in general.
Yeah, you really do. You seem very relational in your content, and I can tell that it's you telling me a story. So I like how you said you're kind of removing a level of communication. I think a lot of nonprofits communicate from the organization perspective as opposed to the personal perspective. And maybe that's what makes you stand out so much is that relationship that you're creating between you, the writer, and the reader. What amazes me, and several of us on our Donorbox team have said this too, is the brevity and the clarity of your messaging. I think anybody that's written an emailer would really love to know what makes your content so engaging.
I think a few things. I've taught writing before, and I always tell people, first find your voice, write like you talk. Put in slang, don't worry about grammar, put in dots and dashes and parentheses, and I'm from the South, so I say y'all, and I'm not trying to make a masterpiece. I'm not writing an essay for a grade. That's the first thing. I write like I talk. If you talk to me and then you read what I write, that's how I write. And I think when people do that, not just me, when people do that, that engages people because they don't feel like they're being talked at. They feel like they're being talked with and having a conversation. Second of all is I try and narrow everything down to one thing that then I can use to expand to what the deeper purpose is. So I use one girl's story, one thing that happened. I might tie it to something in my own life and then to a girl or something. And I think that that also makes it easier to say, here's one person that we did this thing for, and look, we're doing this for 100.
Just to clarify, when you talked about you post a couple times a week, you're sending emails a couple times a week, right?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so that can seem like a lot. Clearly, your engagement is staying on par, but how do you walk that fine line between sending too little and too many emails?
I get emails. So there's a couple of organizations in Uganda. I know the founders. We've done some collaborative things. I get their emails. I don't read them because they don't engage me. So I don't know how many they send, but it's really too many because I don't read them. If people are reading what you're writing, then it's not too many. I write quickly. I am a writer. I've written books. I've written business stuff. So I get that it's probably easier for me than a lot of people. But the reason it's hard for a lot of people is because you're trying to make it so professional. How many emails do you send every day to your friends or texts?
Yeah.
That's what I do. I think if we demystify it a little bit and sort of say, just be you, because I think even if you are not the founder, you're not as invested as I am, if you're working for an organization, obviously in the nonprofit space, you're doing it because you believe in that organization. You're doing it because you believe in their work. Even if you're new, you've gotten enough exposure that you have something to say. And every organization, even if it's dogs and cats or drilling wells, has personal stories. And every one of those people has a story you can tell. And so the way to do that is just like if I'm sitting having coffee with a new friend.
Well, that's similar to any interpersonal relationship.
Right.
You have value in the relationships that you do go through the small stuff, the daily stuff.
That's what I'm trying to do in an email to people who are trying to get to know us.
You're really breaking down those walls that I think organizations tend to put up because they want to sound polished and professional, but maybe it's the personal that could be more impactful.
And 15 years ago, maybe you needed to be more professional, but we live in a day of social media and people want to connect. Word of mouth is your absolute best friend because you probably, especially, we're small. We're not going to break through the noise of social media all necessarily. But if somebody that gets my newsletter says, oh my gosh, like you were saying, oh my gosh, they're doing this impactful work, and sends it to a friend, that's the buy-in. But they're not going to do that if it's all about statistics and budgets, because you wouldn't do that with your friends. I think you have to play with it a little bit, but I think you also have to make it less hard on yourself.
Quit overthinking it so much.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. When you talk about big issues, because these girls in Uganda are experiencing big issues. There's some teen pregnancy, there's poverty, hunger, all these things that they're trying to overcome to make their lives better. How do you convey that emotional impact, but not really exploit the person or the situation?
I think a lot of times when you read something that you come away feeling a little yuck, that was a little bit exploitative to get me to give something, it's because they don't connect with the actual person. I talk about actual people. Thing is to connect people emotionally because I'm connected emotionally. I'm not trying to connect you emotionally to something I don't have emotion about. So, as an analogy, if you're telling a story about your child, people don't feel like you're exploiting your child because you're telling a story about your child because you know your child. Right? There's quirks and good and bad and all those things. And I think where we almost get too far away from telling a personal story because we don't want to be exploitative.
You really are talking about some tough issues with enough emotional detail. It's like the perfect combination there. Do you have some examples of stories that received more engagement than others?
So we had one called The Girl in the Chicken Coop because when I was there, someone referred to us a teen mom who was living literally in a chicken coop. That story had, I don't know, 80 something percent engagement. And then I did an update on her, and that one had a huge amount of engagement. She's now living with us because she got evicted recently, but that was a big one. I have had a couple where I have explained about seasons in Uganda because it's on the equator. I get more emails about that because people are like, I never thought about how you would explain seasons to people who don't have seasons, right? And then we forgot when we budgeted for our farm project to budget in a latrine. And it was really funny because we didn't know until they went out there the first time and thought, oh, we don't have anywhere for anybody to go to the bathroom. And we did a very funny video about it too for social media, and that got a lot of engagement on social media too. Those were our, funny stories, I guess.
Oh, those are brilliant. Yeah. Well, and they drive engagement too because people can relate, and it's like you're just having a conversation with a friend. A lot of nonprofits get in a rut. They have trouble creating this new content, and maybe it's this overthinking part, and maybe they feel like they're trying to tell the same story over and over. Do you ever wrestle with that? And if so, maybe some tips to help overcome it. How do you keep it fresh? Surely you get in a rut.
No, I'll tell you first of all, again, let me say, I am a writer, but I think a lot of times especially if you're doing content management, like capital C, capital M, this is your job, content management. I get that you have to schedule stuff, that you have to plan stuff, that you have to collect your assets and, all that technical stuff. This is literally what I do. My media team sends me a whole bunch of pictures. I go through the pictures. I find one that makes me laugh or makes me cry, and then I build a story around it.
Oh,
I do
brilliant.
it back.
Yeah.
So you probably got the one. We had one recently where it was a group of girls, and the girl in the middle just looked annoyed. You could just tell she's like, stop taking my picture. I don't want to have Well, I have 3 kids, and I have had Christmas photos that look just like that with the one kid, right? So that was the photo I used because it was just great. And everybody can relate to the fact that there's always that one, right? So I think if you get in a rut, go through your assets, the ones maybe you didn't use before because they're not professional enough or they weren't telling the story you wanted to tell before, and see if one of those just makes you laugh. Kind of come at it from a different angle instead of trying to plan everything. Now, year end, obviously, we're all doing year end content, but in general, you can be a lot more flexible.
That is amazing. And that's an approach that I am going to also take when I need to write content, is the work backwards approach. I had never really even thought of that before. Usually you write the content and then go try to hunt down an image or go take a photo of what it is you're trying to convey.
Right. And we're all even if you're not a visual learner, obviously we're a visual people. So just scroll through your stuff and see what you find, because it's sometimes really fun. And people respond to the funny stuff too. They like that kid that's frowning, or, I did one where I'm like, caption this with this crying baby. And, people respond to that because it's fun, and that's just life.
Are you sharing these all on email or social media or both?
Mostly email. On social media, on Instagram, I switched to pretty much 100% reels, and actually we've grown a lot. It's a pain. I hate it. But
it's hard. Yeah.
And then I do pre-schedule. I share my email as a blog. Social media is not generally going along with the email.
Now, obviously, writing is part of who you are. It's a gift and it's a talent that you have. Many of our listeners might be thinking that trying to be this creative is one more thing to do. It seems daunting. It's not in their skill set. What advice would you share with somebody who's just really emerging into this communications and storytelling and really trying to grow in that area?
What I tell people when I teach writing is somebody somewhere probably got their red pen out and marked up your paper, and you immediately thought, I can't write. And you bought into that immediately, because art and writing, both those creative endeavors, it is so easy to squash somebody with too much red pen or, whatever. So the first thing is you have to just write. If writing a novel's on your bucket list, you won't ever write it unless you write. Same thing with newsletters. So look through your general email correspondence to people that you know and see what your voice sounds like. Like, how are you writing when you write to your friends, when you write to your mom, when you write to, and then take that voice and find a picture. This doesn't have to be public. And then just try and take that same voice, just like you were writing an email, just like you were sending it to your cousin in Milwaukee, and write an email and to say what the picture is, and then tie it somehow in. And I think it's easier than you think when you don't try to write in a specific way and don't try and be professional and impactful. Think about it as just starting to build a relationship.
You talked earlier too about sharing one story, and maybe that's one way to make it less intimidating too. I think we see an overwhelming need, and I'm sure we all have a collection of overwhelming calls to actions and a large number of ways to get involved and ways to learn about the organization. Just simplify it by talking about one story, one call to action at a time. That might also be a way to make it less intimidating.
Yeah, I think like I said, even if you're doing dogs and cats and whatever, you have people have stories. The cat has a story, the dog has a story. I think I am always, not because I should, I just do, thanking the people that read it. I always put a call to action as a PS. I never put it in the body. I don't. And it's not always, here's where you can give. Sometimes it's just check out our new website, or I'm speaking at this thing, here's the link. I mean, I think just making it as unintimidating for you also makes it unintimidating for the reader.
Tell me a little bit about the images you use. Do you just share one image in an email too, like one photo, or is there any intentionality about the number and images that you share?
Yes, I typically, and I would say 95% of the time, share one image. I make sure that it's small enough not to interrupt, like to make an opening slow. I sometimes, if I do, like a couple months ago, we had just a whole bunch of stuff happen. And so I did do more of a monthly roundup because so much happened, and I put photos in a lot of those. But in general, it slows down the open. It's more likely to get kicked out by your email carrier. I do think you should put photos in, because the whole point is people are going to connect to people, or cats. Okay, I have cats. I connect. And you need to put a face on what you're asking them to connect, right? It's sort of like saying, Africa is in such bad shape and everybody's starving. Great, that's awesome. I can't fix that. And immediately, because I can't fix that, I check out, right?
Yeah.
But Sylvia, who's 15, just had a baby, and we need to buy some stuff for her. And here's a picture of 15-year-old Sylvia with her 3-day-old baby. I connect with that. I may only have $5 or $10, but I can't solve it, but I can do something about that. And we often are doing the fix Africa problem versus the help Sylvia problem.
So you're taking the problem down to almost a micro level, but that's really resonating with people because they're not overwhelmed. Let's talk a minute about donor-centered communication. Do you use that approach often? How does that work for you?
I do, and it's not a strategy. I have built this from like zero. We had years where literally my husband and I supported the whole thing. We have a very small budget, and I am thankful for every $3 donation that comes in, because first of all, I know how much $3 does in Uganda, which is actually quite astonishing. And so it is, I want people to know that they really are doing something, because I know that they really are doing something. I just believe in gratitude, I mean, we can't do it without them. So they should know that.
Well, and just like the writing is part of who you are, it sounds like the gratitude is part of who you are too. And that's why it's really coming through.
Thank you.
You do a great job welcoming new subscribers into your content?
I just sort of do short. I think each one has a photo, very short, sort of like, hey, here's who we are. If you have any questions, ask us. I'm happy to answer. Here's what you can expect. Very short and simple. I think a welcome series is good. I actually did this week get an email from somebody who's a donor who signed up. And he's like, I'm not going to get this many all the time. And I said, no, I think they're only every other day. And then I only email normally twice a week, and he was fine with that. But I think you start off on the foot you want to continue with. So I don't think you make it real sterile, and again, make it engaging but very short.
You can sign up right from your website.
Yep. And easy peasy.
I thank you so much for spending time sharing these tips and tricks and strategies and a little bit more about yourself and your big heart with us today. So thanks so much, Jennings.
Thank you for having me.
I know I'm sure inspired. Jennings did a terrific job explaining some ways to jumpstart writer's block by using good storytelling plus adding personality in your own voice to deliver authentic, easy to read, engaging content that is sure to be opened in any inbox. And thank you for choosing to spend time with the Nonprofit Podcast. If you'd like to receive content from Jennings and 1018 Uganda in your inbox, you can sign up for their newsletter, and that link is in today's show notes. I hope you've left with confidence to take a small step today that will make a big difference tomorrow. Don't forget to download and review the podcast or give it a thumbs up if you're listening to the Nonprofit Podcast on YouTube. Your review is a great way to help others find us. You're here to help others. We're here to help you. So until next time, stay inspired.
People, passion, connection, action. Put the power to change the world in your supporters' hands this giving season. Maximum reach, maximum impact. Feel the fundraising power of connection. Donorbox peer-to-peer, helping you help others.